So I have two comments and questions here. One is the constant dilemma, ethical dilemma that human beings live between self-interest and the common good. Where shall we go to? And the notion of wealth, that the wealth is not just about material accumulation, and that will be a synonymous of a successful person in life. It's a wealthy person.
Well, you raise a whole range of questions that we need to resolve. What is the relationship between freedom and responsibility? What is the nature of true wealth? And what is our true human nature? Now, resolving those questions depends. Well, they all come back to the question of the mature human consciousness versus the immature human consciousness. When we, in the process of growing up, when we move into our teenage years, we tend to be very focused on our individual freedom, breaking away from our responsibilities to our family and so forth, which feel very confining. So that's part of finding our own identity. It's part of growing up. But if we move into adulthood, responsible adulthood, we recognize that it's not just about individual personal freedom, but that it is about being a responsible parent. It's about being a responsible family member, a responsible citizen. And I've come to recognize that, in the mature consciousness, one recognizes that freedom and responsibility are inseparable. That total freedom without responsibility leads to a life of isolation, and it leads to the fragmentation, destruction of society, and a destruction of underlying security. And that maturity is balancing them. It's recognizing my individual identity, exerting my individual independence as a citizen, but doing that within a framework of a sense of responsibility to the larger whole. Now, in terms of accumulation, one of the huge distortions of our society is the confusion of wealth with money. And our whole language encourages us to pursue money as the ultimate wealth. We're encouraged to believe that those who are making money are in fact creating wealth, whereas the whole Wall Street meltdown demonstrates that whole system was devoted to creating phantom wealth, which is money created out of nothing, unrelated to the production of anything of real value. And that's a form of theft, because it's creating claims against the real wealth of the rest of society. Now, what's real wealth? Well, real wealth is, first of all, the very practical things of value: land, labor, knowledge, etc. But the most important forms of wealth, the things of greatest value, are those that you never find on a financial balance sheet. They are love. They are a healthy, happy child. They're a strong, loving family, community. They're a meaningful job that gives us a sense of self-worth and contribution to the community. It's a healthy environment. This is the absolute opposite extreme of the mindless pursuit of money. Now, the whole question of what is our human possibility to create societies that are based on a sense of real responsibility to the whole, of self-responsibility, of self-control within a true ethical framework, that's a matter of human maturity. That the immature consciousness tends to be very self-centered. It's a very difficult time identifying with a larger common interest. Pursues self-interest, is likely could be very violent. That's the immature side of our personality. Some of the kind of self-centered perspective is part of the perspective we necessarily grow through in our childhood. But if we properly mature into responsible adults, then we begin to cultivate the higher levels of our nature and possibility, which includes this recognition that we are inherently a part of a larger whole, and that our personal well-being depends on the well-being of the larger community. And we also come to recognize that often our greatest sources of personal satisfaction come from being of service to the community. That when we do a good deed, doing a real good deed is not for money, it's not for any reward other than the simple satisfaction of feeling, wow, I'm a useful contributing member of the society. Isn't that cool? And these are the things that we know from our everyday experience, and yet our culture gives us a different story. And this again is part of the transition. We've got to change the framing stories of the culture that tell us money is wealth, that tell us our human nature is flawed, we're inherently violent, greedy, individualistic. These are false stories. These are lies. And the interesting thing is, those lies all tend to affirm the structures of domination, to maintain control. They tend to legitimate those people who are so narrow in their own self-concept and their own sense of their human nature that they devote their lives to the pursuit of money rather than to service to community. But these are all signs of dysfunction, which we generally know, most people know in their heart of hearts the truth, but since they hear these other stories out in the culture continuously, they doubt their own wisdom. It's one of the reasons why I say that honest conversation is perhaps the most revolutionary act of our time, because it is through sharing our true beliefs, our true understanding, that we come to recognize that I'm not alone, that the truth I know in my heart is actually shared by most humans. And if we bring it out in conversation, we begin to change the public story. We reshape the culture, which is the frame within which we engage in our collective behavior. So, in terms of the question of how do we change this, I think of kind of three levels of action. The first level of action is conversation to change the stories, and it's communication, it's writing, it's speaking, it's use of the media, and so forth to expose, bluntly, the lies of our prevailing culture, and replace those with the truth that most people know, so we can begin to act collectively in a different way. Second level of action is creating a new reality from the bottom up, and this is why many of us are involved in the work of rebuilding local economies, rebuilding local food systems, retrofitting our buildings and facilities and so forth to be more energy conserving, developing alternative energy sources, and rebuilding community, rebuilding the relationships of caring and community. That's all part of growing the new reality, the new institutions, the new ways of being from the bottom up. And then the third area of action is changing the rules. That we've actually created a society of rules that favor the greedy, the rapacious, that favor the making of money over the creation of real wealth. This all goes to the heart of the destruction. We need to fundamentally change those framing rules of the society so that we favor local businesses over global financial institutions and corporations that act more like a vacuum cleaner sucking the wealth out of community and destroying families and communities for private profit, as well, not to mention destroying the natural environment. We need rules that favor innovation in the public interest over private wealth accumulation. We need systems of mutual care in terms of our retirement programs, medical systems, and so forth, so that we create active, effective social safety nets that keep us secure in common.